As per usual, when the Orioles take on the Red Sox, it was a wild series at Camden Yards over the weekend. When it was all said and done, it was a series split in the 4-game set. I'll recap the final 3 games of the weekend coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, August 19th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb. And coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the final 3 games of the 4-game set that the Orioles and the Red Sox split over the weekend at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. Get you what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to something from all 3 games Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The O's losing Friday 12-10, losing Saturday 5-1, but then coming back to win it 4-2 on Sunday to get the series split. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. So that was the series over the weekend. Orioles and Red Sox, they split 4. On Friday's episode, I recapped the 5-1 win for the Orioles in Game 1 on Thursday night. Make sure to go back and check that one out if you have not already. But today, we'll get to the O's Friday and Saturday losses and then their Sunday win. All in all, after the weekend that was, the Orioles are now 73-52 on the season. As I am recording, the Orioles are a half game back of the Yankees. The Yankees just started, it's a little after 7 here, just started the Little League Classic game on Sunday Night Baseball against the Tigers, being played in Williamsport, PA. Hoping for the best, Tarik Skubal, the Cy Young frontrunner in the American League, is on the hill for Detroit. As far as I know at this point, he had a 1-2-3 top of the first inning, got Soto out, struck out Judge. Hopefully he keeps it up. If the Yankees do lose, the Orioles will be tied with the Yanks, but with the tiebreaker, so in first place heading into Monday. Of course, if the Yankees do find a way to win the game, the Orioles will still just be 1 game back of New York heading into Monday. But let's start with a recap of Friday's game, because that might have been the wildest baseball game that the Orioles have played this year. And unfortunately, they did not come out on the winning end. Final score from Friday was the Red Sox 12 and the Orioles 10 in Game 2 of a 4-game set. Let's start with what went right on Friday night. And that was the offensive firepower from the Orioles. 10 runs on 17 hits from the O's bats on Friday was pretty dang impressive. 8 of the 9 starters had at least 1 hit. All 9 of them reached base. And you had guys up and down the lineup showing out. Ryan Mountcastle had a couple of doubles. He had 5 hard hit balls in this game. That tied a season high, or at least a single game high, from an Orioles hitter this season. You had another multi-hit game from Eloy Jimenez. You had Jackson Holliday coming up with his first career 4-hit game that included an RBI and his first career triple. That was cool to see. I mean, heck, James McCann was out there with a 2-for-4 day with an RBI out of the 9 spot. The Orioles just got an insane amount of production in this game. And it's unfortunate, right, that you put up 10 runs on 17 hits in a game when your pitching gives up 12, and you really would like to win games when you score 10 runs. Unfortunately, that's not what happened on Friday. But, I mean, they walked 6 times to only 8 strikeouts. That was really impressive. I mean, it was a complete offensive performance for the Orioles. And it was like on the other side, every time the Red Sox came up with a big inning offensively, like the Sox scored 2 in the third to go up 4-1. The Orioles answered right away with 3 in the bottom half to tie the game at 4. Then the Red Sox tried to blow it open with 4 in the 4th. Well, the Orioles got 2 back in the 5th, got right back in it. Red Sox got 3 in the 7th. That put them up 11-6. That felt like, okay, game is over. Orioles get 3 of their own in the 7th, and all of a sudden, it's right back to 11-9 and a baseball game once again. Red Sox get 1 in the 8th. Orioles get 1 back in the 8th to keep within striking distance. It's pretty impressive to see. They clobbered the baseball throughout the night, which was really cool to see as well. You just got to love that kind of offensive performance. And again, it just sucks that it came in a game where you give up 12. Now, some of the argument is, okay, when, Boston is leading by so much. Maybe they're not using all their high leverage guys. You have more of a chance to score. Yeah, that's true as well. But still, impressive offensive performance. Now, what went wrong? Well, in general, it was the Oriole pitching that gave up 12 runs in this game, but specifically it was Corbin Burns, who had not only his worst start in an Oriole uniform, you could make a fairly compelling case that he had the worst start of his major league career on Friday night. Burns, for the first time ever as a starter, allowed 8 earned runs. And for the first time this year, he did not complete 5 innings, just 4 innings of work on 95 pitches for Corbin Burns. He allowed 8 earned runs on 10 hits, struck out 7, walked 3, allowed 2 home runs to the Red Sox offense, ballooned his ERA up to 3.10 on the year. That's how good he's been, that you have a start this bad and you still have a 3 ERA. But it was just not the Corbin Burns that we know and love that we saw on Friday night. His cutter, I mean, it still has been, always will be his number 1 most used pitch. It's a 96, 97 mile per hour cut fastball. And it's a pitch that's been losing some of its horizontal movement. That's the kind of right to left that makes it a cutter. It's lost a little bit of it in 2024. It's been some of the reasons why his strikeouts have been down this year, but he's still been one of the best pitchers in the American League despite that. But even with his cutter movement being down, it's still been able to get a lot of outs. He's still been getting some swings and misses. He did not even get 1 swing and miss against his cutter. And he threw it pretty much as he usually does, about half the time. No swings and misses, 50% hard hit rate when the Red Sox put that cutter in play. That is concerning. Now, the horizontal movement itself wasn't terrible on Friday, but overall this season, it's been something that's been going down. Although the velocity is there, the I don't want to say usefulness of the cutter, because it's still been a super useful pitch by run value. It's still been like the best cutter in baseball and one of the best pitches in baseball, but it hasn't been to the same level. It's been that completely elite dominant level. It's been the last couple of years. Now, the 3 starts in August have not been good for Corbin Burns. He's got a 9 ERA in his 3 starts, 4 earned runs, 3 earned runs, 8 earned runs. Now, obviously, when you're looking at a 3-start sample and one of them you give up 8 runs, that's going to balloon that ERA, no question about it. But even though he was good in July, he didn't have any amazingly dominant starts in July either. Now, there's been some people completely jumping off the bandwagon like, oh, Burns is not an ace anymore. He's losing it. No. He's been incredible this year. It was an amazing pickup by the Orioles in the offseason. Where in the world would they be without what Corbin Burns has given them every 5th day? And he is not going to win Cy Young, but he is easily going to finish top 5 and potentially even top 3 in AL Cy Young. That is what the O's needed at the top of their rotation, and that is what they have gotten in Corbin Burns. But it's also good to say he's been a little shaky over the last few weeks. In his first 20 starts, he only had 2 of those 20 where he walked at least 3 batters. And in both of those starts, it was just 3 walks. Then in his last 6 starts, 3 of those 6 have been at least 3 walks, 2 of them with 3 and 1 of them with 4. That is not the elite command we are used to from Corbin Burns. And you add that with the fact that even when he's not throwing balls, sometimes he's just not commanding the cutter around the strike zone as well as usual. That's allowed it to be more hittable. Now, 99% of what we saw from Burns was bad. Maybe 98% of what we saw from Burns was bad on Friday. Again, his worst start as an Oriole, maybe the worst start of his major league career. However, I would say there were 2 things you can take on the positive side. 7 strikeouts that he still had in just 4 innings. That's one of the better per rate basis strikeout games he's had on the season. And also, he did go to the changeup really more than ever in an Oriole uniform. Burns on Friday night, now the cutter was his number 1 pitch, as it usually is. He threw 42% cutters, but he also threw 25% changeups, his second most used pitch, and it was dominant. They did not put the changeup in play. He got 7 whiffs on 14 swings against that changeup on Friday night. And, he popped in his slider and his curveball when he needed to, but I think there could be a positive that comes out of this start, and that is Burns realizes how good that changeup can be. He's thrown it here and there throughout the season, but it was much more of a go-to pitch Friday than it's ever been. I think that could really help him against lefties because generally the cutter is that weapon where he just jams lefties in or dots it backdoor on the outside corner. He doesn't have as good a command of his cutter and doesn't have as much movement on his cutter than he used to have. So maybe that changeup can now become a much bigger weapon against left-handed hitters. Watch out for that in his next start. I think you could see something. I believe he'll start Wednesday in New York against the Mets, or actually probably pushed back more likely he'll start Thursday night against the Astros. Just watch for that changeup. This could be a big change that actually turns his season back in the positive direction. But the shout out for the Orioles Friday night, well, it goes to Ramon Arias. You may have noticed I didn't mention his offensive game. Well, he had the best night out of anyone when the O's scored 10 runs. Arias with, I don't think you have to argue much, the best offensive game of his major league career. Out of the 8-hole, he goes 3 for 3 with 2 singles, a home run, a walk, and a career-high 5 RBIs with 3 hard hit balls for Arias. Now, he has not been overall in August as productive as he was in the month of July. I mean, he was incredible in July. In August, he's just been okay. But you know what? You look at Arias's production here, and he's not going to light the world on fire. But, after Sunday's game where he had 0 for 2 with a walk, he's got a 699 OPS. We'll just say he's got a 700 OPS basically on the season. And while that's not, lighting the world on fire, if he's hitting 8th or 9th every game and posting a 700 OPS and has the ability to hit the ball hard sometimes, and we know he's not the defender at third he was 2 years ago when he won the Gold Glove. He's at -9 outs above average at third base this year. He was at +7 in 2022 when he won that Gold Glove award. So he's, and you can see it by the eye test, he's not the same defender at third. He's still much more trustworthy than, when they put Coby Mayo out there for a little bit. And the Orioles and Brandon Hyde clearly do trust him defensively to play third base if they need him to every single day. And that's kind of where Arias is right now. I mean, he's got a 115 WRC plus with a 274 average since the All-Star break. That's certainly a productive hitter, especially right at the bottom of your order. And here's the thing, the Orioles are still waiting on Jordan Westburg to come back. They gave Coby Mayo some run. He went 1 for 17. He went back down to AAA. Maybe wasn't quite fully ready. And Mayo call-up was a lot of Westburg being injured and needing a third base option. But Arias is a guy who in the past has been an everyday starter for you, especially with some of the rebuilding Orioles teams, and then kind of still had that job even in 2022 when they were turning things around. So he's done this before. Now, maybe not with this much pressure and a team trying to compete for first place, but he's been in this role. It's not like he's been a career utility guy who's thrown into a starting role. He's been an everyday player before. And the Orioles may call up J.D. Davis today, right? The O's are going to face 5 lefties in 7 games this week. Davis has been hitting well at AAA since they signed him, a right-handed batter who can hit lefties. He may come up and Soto may go down and Davis might get a couple of starts. But I think in general, until the O's can get Jordan Westburg back from that broken hand, which they're targeting mid to late September, it seems like, to hopefully get him back before the regular season is over, it feels like unless something completely changes, this is just kind of going to be Ramon Arias' job at third base. And maybe, J.D. Davis gets some time. Maybe Coby Mayo does come back and get a few more chances at third. But the majority of the plate appearances and the innings, I think, are going to go to Ramon Arias. And honestly, if he can give you solid defense and a 700 OPS and hit 9th, I'm totally fine with the Orioles making that decision. But that was a crazy baseball game on Friday. Saturday was a little more straightforward. Unfortunately, the Orioles were back on the losing end again in much more of a pitcher's duel. We'll break down what happened in that one coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Prize Picks. For me, the most fun and exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. How do you play it? Well, all you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. That's right. You can take $10 and turn it into $1,000. Sign up today and you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. And now we're getting to football season, 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. You can't beat that. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, run your game. And this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by the DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with the DK Law Group. The DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. And one thing you'll notice quickly with the DK Law Group is they believe in clarity and cost, and no one should be left in limbo. So contact the DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. And Locked On Orioles listeners can call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. So the Orioles dropped a wild offensive affair, 12-10 on Friday. Saturday was much more of a pitcher's duel in Game 3 of 4 of this series. Unfortunately, the Orioles were on the losing end again by a score of 5-1 on Saturday. And what went right from Saturday's loss? Well, that was Cade Povich. We kind of found out on Friday that the Orioles were planning on calling Cade Povich up. They added him to the taxi squad Friday and activated him Saturday to make the start. Now, Brandon Hyde and the Orioles made it pretty clear when they made the move before Saturday's game. Povich was here to give everybody else in that rotation one extra day of rest, and he was going back down to AAA after the game. I mean, we knew it. No matter what happened, he was going to be a Norfolk Tide again on Sunday. And despite the fact that he had really good back-to-back 7-inning starts in Norfolk before this call-up, and despite the fact that he pitched so well, which we'll get to, it was always in the plans to go back down. But from what Povich showed us on Saturday night, it is not out of the question at all to see him back in an Oriole uniform and maybe back into the rotation in general before this season was over. Povich, in basically a call-up spot start, was phenomenal. I would argue the best start of his big league career. You could say it was the 6 scoreless against the Braves. I think it was this one, the way he looked. 6 1/3 innings, 2 runs on 6 hits allowed by Povich, 6 strikeouts, and the big one, no walks for the rookie lefty on 89 pitches. And that has been the just huge issue for him, not just in the majors, but in the minors and even in AAA this year, is just the stuff is good. He gets strikeouts, he gets outs, but the command can evade him at times, and he struggles with walks throughout parts of games. That just was not the case. I believe he had only 1 3-ball count in that start on Saturday night. That is super impressive from Cade Povich, and he just rolled along in this game. He went 5 scoreless, went back out there for the 6th, got in a little bit of trouble, gave up a run, but got out of the jam. And then Brandon Hyde let him back out there in the 7th, got a strikeout, gave out a 1-out single, and then came out of the game. It was 1-1, top 7, got a huge standing ovation from a huge Camden Yards crowd with the Colton Cowser t-shirt giveaway on Saturday night. And just an awesome moment for Cade Povich, who came up and looked like a different pitcher, really for 2 reasons. One was he just buried the ball in the strike zone. That is not what Povich was doing in the past. He was walking guys. He was getting in 3-ball counts. He was pitching around hitters. No. That is not what we saw from Cade Povich on Saturday night. 89 pitches, 63 strikes. That is a different pitcher that we saw on Saturday. And the other thing was his pitch mix changed a little bit. Now, we still saw a lot of 4-seam fastballs, right? 92 to 94. He's not going to overpower you, but he's going to throw it up in the zone, get some pop-up, get some lazy fly balls, got 5 swings and misses on that pitch as well, playing it up in the zone. But the thing that was really interesting was the changeup. Now, he threw 40 4-seamers out of 89 pitches, by far his number 1 most used pitch, but 18 changeups, that was his number 2 pitch. And he got 4 whiffs on 12 swings, and he commanded that changeup so much better than we have ever seen. That was basically, he used to have 6 pitches. The changeup was his number 5 pitch in his first stint in the big leagues. In this start, he cut out the sinker, he cut out the cutter, he went to 4 pitches, made the changeup number 2, and was awesome through a career high 6 1/3 innings against this Red Sox lineup that, remember, had put up 12 runs the night before and basically stifled them pitching into the 7th. It was really, really impressive what I saw from Cade Povich. And the great thing you like to see is not just that he got 15 swings and misses, not that he just cut his pitch mix, but he cut his pitch mix with purpose. His cutter, now his sinker he threw a little bit, but the cutter, that was his number 3 pitch in his first stint in the big leagues. It was getting destroyed. Huge slugging percentage, opponents hitting way over 300 against that cut fastball. He just didn't even throw it once. That is an adjustment you love to see. He goes to the changeup. It was working throughout the game. He threw it more and more to righties, and it kept working. It had a lot of deception. There was a good amount of deception in that Cade Povich delivery, and it really showed up when balancing the fastball and the changeup. That was super impressive. And listen, this is a really simple way to put things, but he threw strikes consistently. Hadn't done that in the past, did it Saturday, and oh, look at that. When you have the kind of talent and the stuff he has, If you can throw it for quality strikes, you're going to pitch into the 7th against a good Red Sox offense. And that's what we saw. And again, he did get optioned right back down to AAA on Sunday. Colin Selby, was the relief pitcher who was called up in his place, who the O's signed to a minor league deal a couple of weeks ago. But I don't think this closes the book on Povich in the rotation this year. I think he'll be back. There's at least one spot that could be open depending on the Grayson Rodriguez timeline. You're going to pitch that well. You're going to get a shot in this playoff race in September. Just kudos to what Cade Povich did. Now, what went wrong? That was the Orioles offense. Now, to be clear, the bullpen wasn't great either. And Yennier Cano lets him run score, and then Birch Smith lets him run score, and the Red Sox pulled away. We'll get to them more when recapping Sunday's game. But the O's offense, when you score one run, you're not going to win a whole lot of games, especially the night after you scored 10 runs. Then in this game, you didn't even need 10, you just needed a few. And one run on 5 hits is not going to cut it, especially when you have only 3 hard hit balls in the game. One from Cowser, one from O'Hearn, and one when Eloy Jimenez was robbed of a home run by Jarren Duran in the 9th inning as a pinch hitter. Those were the 3 hard hit balls by the Orioles Saturday night. That is not going to play whatsoever. Even their one run, Gunnar Henderson's solo home run off of Brian Bayo, which broke up the no-hitter and tied the game at 1 at the bottom of the 6th inning, that was only 93 miles per hour off the bat for the exit velocity. It's got to get to 95 to be considered a hard hit ball. I mean, he just got it over the roof of the grounds crew in right field to tie the game and didn't hit it super hard. So the O's Bayo was amazing. That changeup he threw, you talk about Povich having a great changeup. Brian Bayo's changeup was basically unhittable for the Red Sox Saturday night, but the Orioles just couldn't string anything together. Even when they got a little bit off Bayo, they got into a Red Sox bullpen that hasn't been very good. They had their shot. They loaded the bases in the 7th. Adley and Santander just kind of couldn't come through in big spots. But yeah, one run is just not going to cut it offensively in a Major League Baseball game. And the shout out goes to James McCann. James McCann starting back-to-back games, did get pinch hit for. Adley Rutschman came in the game in the 7th inning, but McCann had to step in. Adley was scratched 20 minutes before Friday's game with some lower back discomfort. McCann went in there, got 2 hits on Friday night. Then Adley still was not 100% on Saturday, so McCann started that game again. He did have an 0 for 1, but drew a walk. And McCann, who's been walking a lot more lately, he had a 138 WRC plus in July. This has been mostly with this broken nose, although it's been improving. He's still catching well. He's playing good defense behind the plate. And again, he's still a below average hitter across the board, and he's still not the greatest blocker. He's got a really good throwing arm, though, and the pitchers like to work with him. And he's put together a much better batter's eye as of late. He's getting on base more. I just feel like you look at James McCann, yeah, he's getting older and he's not as productive of a hitter, but he's going to be a free agent after this year. If he's going to be cheap and is willing to come back on a cheap 1-year deal, at the very least to be the bridge to Samuel Basallo, who I don't think is really going to be ready until 2026, give James McCann a 1-year deal. Bring him back here as Adley's backup in 2025. You asked me a couple months ago, maybe not so sure of that being the case, but at this point, yeah, there's other options who could produce like he does offensively, but he's in the mold of this team the last 2 years, and I think has been a bigger part than people realize of the Orioles being this good the last 2 seasons. I am very on board at this point on a 1-year deal to bring McCann back as the Orioles backup catcher in 2025. But the O's did lose the game again Saturday, and then kind of backs against the wall, right? Win the first game, lose the next 2. You're trying to get out of here, not losing a 4-game series at home to the Red Sox, not letting them kind of creep up on you in the division or even in the wild card race. But the Orioles, they battened down the hatches. They got the win Sunday to secure the series split. Coming up next, I'll tell you how they did it to finish off the pod. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we've got something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, just bet $5, and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. Sounds like a great deal to me. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. You can't beat that deal for just $5, 3 weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket. So just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. So the Orioles kind of had their backs against the wall a little bit on Sunday, not trying to lose a series at home to the Red Sox, but they got the job done with a 4-2 victory in the final game of this 4-game set to split the 4 games evenly between them and the Red Sox. Now, what went right on Sunday? Well, what went right was Albert Suarez. I mean, you cannot say enough about what Albert Suarez has done for the Orioles since jumping back into the rotation. He had a rotation spot. The O's added Zach Eflin and Trevor Rogers at the trade deadline, and Suarez went back to the bullpen like we all had expected that the O's were going to add 2 starters. And he was a little shaky in the pen. And then the game in Toronto, 10 minutes before the game, Grayson Rodriguez scratched with a lat issue. He's now on the injured list. Orioles hoping to get him back at some point in mid-September, but you don't really know. And you're kind of scared without Grayson. And Albert Suarez steps in on basically no notice and gives the Orioles 5 scoreless innings in Toronto. Then he goes into the 7th scoreless in Tampa Bay. Then he gets the ball again on Sunday with Cade Povich helping him out a little bit, pushing him back one day to give him one extra day of rest because Suarez is going to get, well over the amount of innings that he's at least thrown in the States, although he threw a good amount of innings in Japan or Korea in a couple of those years. But he did it again. 6 scoreless innings from Albert Suarez on Sunday. 7 hits, scattered him well, 6 strikeouts, no walks on 99 pitches, just 4 hard hit balls against him. I mentioned Corbin Burns' ERA is up to 3.10. Suarez's ERA is down to 3.18. He's basically equal with Burns, obviously in less innings, but still, you just can't say enough about what Albert Suarez has done for this Orioles team, and especially these last 3 starts since Grayson went down. 17 2/3 scoreless innings, 13 hits, 7 strikeouts, 3 walks in that stretch. He's been incredible. And once again, it was that heavy fastball approach, 61% fastballs, got 11 swings and misses on that pitch, and he especially got those whiffs when he needed them. Got into jams in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, got out of them with strikeouts with high fastballs. That is the bread and butter for Albert Suarez. Throw that high fastball, 95, 96, sometimes creeping it up to 97. And it's got that ride. It's got that deception with his kind of odd short arm delivery almost at times, and doesn't get all the way down the mound, but it seems to help him. And he strikes guys out when he needs it. He just continues to do it, goes to the cutter when he absolutely needs one, and can get it out with a high cutter, can get a ground ball with a changeup. Listen, he threw that fastball a lot. Only a 33% in-zone rate for a 4-seam fastball, a pitcher using 60% of the time, is kind of concerning, but it still works. I'm not going to question what Albert Suarez is doing out there. Guy's 35 and just giving you 3 straight scoreless starts when he had no idea he was even going to be back in the rotation. That's how good he's been. And again, it's the same kind of approach that Suarez throws every time, so it's not anything crazy when it works because we've seen it before, but when he piles on scoreless start after scoreless start, it becomes more and more impressive. And at this point, I think we are hoping and a little bit expecting Grayson Rodriguez to be back before the regular season ends and definitely be back and healthy into the playoff rotation. And you're hoping you can go Burns, Rodriguez, and Eflin. But generally, if you're going to make a deep playoff run, you're going to need a 4th starter. Would it be crazy to say Albert Suarez is that guy? I mean, if you're starting Albert Suarez in a playoff game, are you feeling that bad about it right now? It sounds a little bit crazy with where he came from this year, but he's earned it. Everything he's done, he has earned it. He has stepped up to the challenge, every challenge the O's have given him this year, and he has shined. Just unbelievable what he does for this Orioles pitching staff. What went wrong for the O's? Well, this Oriole bullpen is still figuring things out just a little bit. Now, Cionel Perez came in and did get a scoreless 7th with the Orioles leading 4-0, but he came back out for the 8th, which was the right move. He had the 2 tough lefties in Tristan Casas and Rafael Devers coming up in the 8th. The plan was Devers faces both of those guys, then we go to the righty. Well, he walk and double to those 2 guys, and all of a sudden you're in a jam. Cano comes in, tries to get out of it, can't quite get out of the jam, gives up a run. Dominguez comes in with the bases loaded, leaves him loaded at 4-1, does give up a solo home run in the 9th, but gets himself a 4-out save to lock down the victory, and that was good to see. But these final 3 games, after really the first 3 games of the week, the first 2 against the Nats, and then the series opening win over the Red Sox, the Orioles bullpen was outstanding in the first 3 games of this homestand. Then in the final 3 that we're recapping here, just not very good. Sir Anthony Dominguez was great, even though he gave up the homer. He was throwing strikes. Not many other guys are throwing enough strikes. In the final 3 games of the weekend, here is the line for the Orioles bullpen. 10 2/3 innings pitched, 9 earned runs on 12 hits with 11 strikeouts, 5 walks, and 4 home runs allowed. That is a 7.59 ERA for the bullpen this weekend. I mean, Craig Kimbrell had maybe his worst outing in an Oriole uniform. Like that was really bad when we saw him pitching in fairly low leverage on Saturday. I mean, Keegan Aiken had a good outing, but a lot of other guys, Birch Smith gave up that big kind of, game clinching home run to Devers in the 8th on Saturday. There's a lot to sort out with this Oriole bullpen tomorrow. My plan is for on tomorrow's episode to get another edition of the Orioles bullpen trust power rankings to try and sort out how I feel about all these Orioles relievers in the pen right now. But there seems to be a lot of guys in a mushy middle. There's a couple of guys really struggling, a couple of guys pitching well maybe, and then I don't really know what's going on in the middle of this bullpen. Some guys are going to have to step up, but we'll try to get to that on tomorrow's episode. The shout out for Sunday's win, well, the shout out goes to the Orioles franchise cornerstones, Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman. It was another home run off a lefty for Gunnar, a 2-run shot in the 6th, gave the Orioles a little bit of breathing room, hit it off Bailey Horn on a hanging breaking ball, put the O's up 4-0, 103 off the bat, traveled 395 feet for Gunnar's 33rd home run of the year, and also his 4th home run in his last 5 games, has been on an absolute tear on this homestand. Before these last 5 games, he had just 1 home run since the All-Star break before hitting 4 homers in 5 games. The second time this season, he's had a 4-homer in 5-game stretch. And now all of a sudden, he's back on pace to hit 43 home runs this season. I mean, he's hitting 308 with a 951 OPS in August. Gunnar against breaking balls, not just from righties, but also against lefties, has been tremendous this year. Gunnar Henderson against sliders and curveballs, hitting 318 with a 752 slugging percentage in 2024. Those are absurd numbers. He's getting hot again. The power's back again. Watch out again for Gunnar Henderson. And then Adley Rutschman seemed to be good. He had the lower back discomfort, scratched him Friday, didn't start Saturday, did come in as a pinch hitter, but did start behind the plate again on Sunday. Back seemed to be okay, and certainly seemed to be okay at the plate. He opened the scoring with a solo home run into the flag court in the bottom of the 5th to put the Orioles up 1-0 off of Red Sox starter Cutter Crawford, 106 off the bat. Kind of lofted it, but 358 feet was enough for it to get out. Been a long time since Adley went deep. His first home run in almost a month. He hadn't left the ballpark since July 19th. It had been a little while for Adley Rutschman. We know how bad he was in July. His stats offensively have been much better in August, but the power hadn't come back. Maybe this home run can get him going. And if these two, Henderson and Rutschman, start hitting for power again, that is when the Oriole offense can really take flight. So watch out for that one. And hopefully, as they head to Queens this week, they can keep up the power potential and keep up the winning that we saw on Sunday as well, as the O's do split the series with the Red Sox. And then next up, as I mentioned, the O's and the Mets. It is Trevor Rogers. He's faced the Mets a lot when he was with the Marlins. He takes the ball again. It's been kind of a rough going for Rogers in an Oriole uniform since the trade deadline. Hopefully he can turn things around here Monday night, a 7:10 p.m. start at Citi Field. And he goes up against a lefty for the Mets. That is David Peterson. It's been pretty good this year. A 3.04 ERA for the 28-year-old lefty, coming off 6 1/3 scoreless innings against the A's in his last start. Doesn't throw super hard, low 90s fastball, good breaking stuff, a changeup. We'll see what the O's can do tonight. And then I'll be back tomorrow recapping Game 1 between the Orioles and the Mets and taking a closer look at this bullpen. The bullpen trust rankings, planning to pull them back out tomorrow and trying to figure out who the Orioles can trust when they turn to a relief arm. That's coming up on tomorrow's episode, though. Until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.